Welcome to Based On, an Adaptation podcast. I'm Pamela Portnoy. My guest today is Frank Onorati. We'll be talking about Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets, directed by Chris Columbus and written for the screen by Steve Kloves, which is, of course, based on the novel by J.K. Rowling. Just a fair warning, there will be spoilers. Hi, Frank.
Hey, how's it going?
It's going so well. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Of course, happy to be here.
Yes. I'm so happy you chose this one because I love all of them, but 2 is not my favorite, and I'm happy you're able to tackle it with me.
Well, that's a good thing because I'd say between all of them, 1 and 2 are probably my favorites, but I can't decide between the 2 of them. So we'll have 2 different perspectives, I think.
I did have certain feelings rewatching it this time, but I'm excited to get into it. But before we do, we're going to get into the rapid fire quiz.
Let's do it.
Frank, are you ready to adapt?
Oh, yes. I'm totally ready. Let's do it. Is that a regular thing? Do you do that? That's amazing. I love it.
This is the first time it did not get received well. You literally cringed. That made me so happy. Okay, good.
Okay.
I'm glad it's a strong reaction and not just boring. So
I literally have nothing but strong reactions. So.
Perfect. Okay. Question 1. Book before movie or movie before book?
Book before movie.
Excellent. Happy ending or shocking twist?
Shocking twist.
Yes. Most devastating book death?
Do I have to answer these quickly or can I elaborate?
You can elaborate. I think the shortest we've ever gone through these questions is maybe 3 minutes.
Okay. So probably Lenny from Of Mice and Men would be the most devastating book death of my childhood.
Okay.
Just reading that book in school, I didn't like any of the books in school that I read, but the ending of Mice and Men just devastating. Absolutely. More recently, probably Boromir from Lord of the Rings. Yeah, because I read a lot more fantasy now, so definitely Boromir or Robb Stark.
Yeah.
Yeah, one of those 2.
When you say you're reading more fantasy now, is that now during quarantine?
No, I'm just, as I got older, I got more into fantasy, and it was mostly an escape from required reading in school because unfortunately, they don't give you required reading that's fantasy. It'd be nice, except for Beowulf.
Right. It would be nice.
Yeah.
They should. I need to read. I watched Lord of the Rings and I watched Game of Thrones, but I did not read them.
Yeah.
I need to brace myself because, it's a lot. For me, for Game of Thrones, it was Ned.
Yeah.
On the show that messed me up because that was the first death that I was like, oh, they're serious. They just killed Sean Bean.
Yeah.
Who was the most notable actor on there. And I was like, what the fuck?
It's funny because for everyone who watched the show and didn't read the books, it came a little bit more out of nowhere just because it had to, because it was happening over a much smaller span of time. In the books, there's a little bit more buildup, but I think also in the books, there's sort of just enough buildup that you can almost think that he's going to escape. And then he doesn't.
Horrifying.
Yeah.
But there is something to the books that you read when you're younger and have a sad moment like that. They hit you differently because of, I guess, your age.
Yeah, absolutely. And also the fact that the character of Lenny is sort of without guilt, as he's supposed to be. And so it's horrifying. It's kind of like John Coffey in The Green Mile.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Same situation. It's this character that you love and there's nothing about them that's negative. And then they're just kind of taken away from you. And you're like, no.
That's awful. Awful. Good answer.
Thank you.
All right. Favorite fictional couple?
Leslie Knope and Ben Wyatt from Parks and Recreation.
I love that answer. I love you and I like you. Favorite film adaptation?
Either The Lord of the Rings or Scott Pilgrim versus the World.
Haven't seen that one.
My God. You have to read the graphic novels, and then you have to see for a movie that has to pack in so much into one movie, they did an amazing job. It's the same guy who did Baby Driver. What's his name?
The director?
Yeah.
Edgar Wright?
Edgar Wright, yep.
Yeah.
I mean, he did a phenomenal job, and that's the only movie I like Michael Cera in.
Really?
Oh,
you don't like him in Superbad?
I guess, yeah. But that was before Michael Cera became Michael Cera.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, fair enough. I need to see it. Least favorite film adaptation?
So many. The first version of Series of Unfortunate Events with Jim Carrey.
Yeah.
Aragon. I was a huge fan of those books, and they just absolutely just destroyed it. The Last Airbender, the M. Night Shyamalan remake of the TV show, was possibly the worst thing ever.
Really?
Truly.
Why?
So many reasons. Oh my God.
I love M. Night Shyamalan stuff.
You would not like this.
Really?
I mean, his other stuff, sure, like Signs, all that stuff is great. But this was, if you haven't seen the TV show, you should watch it.
Okay.
It's a 3-season cartoon that they adapted the first season into one movie, and they were planning on doing multiples. But it's like whitewashed characters that in the cartoon were originally like of different races, weird pronunciations of characters' names and stuff like that, instead of just sticking with the original pronunciations. Then also it was right around the time where like practical effects were losing out to CGI. And so they were trying to CGI the like special powers that people have in this world, which is like the ability to control the elements, quote unquote, fire, water, and earth. Mm-hmm. And it just looks so pathetic because it's like they have these really intense choreographed like karate scenes, and then like one little tiny rock comes up and it gets like thrown at a person. In the TV show, it's like people are like lifting up huge boulders and shit like that. It's just too expensive, I guess, to sell.
Got it. Terrible. Interesting. Okay. Favorite actor? It could be male, female, whatever.
Ben Foster.
Nice. Yeah. That's a good choice. That's a lot of my male actors have that same answer. Actor friends have that same answer.
He is one of the most underrated, and he's always like the secondary character, but he's always gripping in whatever character he plays.
He's fantastic for sure. Favorite fandom?
Probably again Avatar: The Last Airbender, because it's one of the only like animated shows that has a adult-ish audience, but they're not like other anime fans. They don't gatekeep. They're like more than happy to let other people join in the, like Avatar just came to Netflix, and so a bunch of people are rediscovering it, and everybody who's seen it when it originally came out was like, great, come on, everybody, we love this show, come enjoy it. Whereas like other shows, people will be like, oh, well, you didn't watch it when it first came out, so I don't want to talk to you. It's like, fuck those people.
Interesting. Can I ask you, how comfortable do you feel sharing that that's your favorite fandom when didn't you just marry into a Star Wars family fandom?
I guess it sort of depends on your definition of fandom, right?
Yeah.
So
I know you married into a Star Wars family.
I guess. I don't know. I mean, Kristen doesn't really care.
No?
No. And I forced her to watch Avatar: The Last Airbender, and like the first 2 or 3 episodes, she was like not having it. And then by the end, she's like, wait, so there's only 3 seasons? I'm like, well, there's a second show. And she's like, well, why can't we watch it? And I'm like, because it's not on any of the streaming services. I mean, I'll buy it.
That's amazing. Yeah. And didn't you guys just watch the movies in the order in which they were intended to be seen? Yeah,
in sequential order, like 1 through 9 for Star Wars. Yeah.
I need to do that. I don't think I've even seen all of them.
I don't know. Star Wars was a real letdown for me in the last.
Do you guys
three.
really have to compromise when watching these?
Yeah, I mean, we usually have like similar tastes, but like she's been trying to get me to watch stuff that I just have no interest in watching, like Gilmore Girls, and it's like that's not for me.
Yeah, no, I feel that. I love Gilmore Girls, but it's very specific type of show. And I know you don't like the fast paced
dialogue,
because the dialogue, right? Like you have your is it Sorkin that you like, or you don't like either Sorkin or Amy Sherman Palladino?
I don't like Sorkin or Amy Sherman Palladino because they both write in a way that nobody actually speaks. I've never met a single person who hasn't stumbled over their words once in a conversation. So,
right.
Like, I don't doubt that there's uber intelligent people.
But there also aren't dragons, Frank.
Yeah, but I don't think that they're dragons, but it's like you write stuff like that, and then people tend to, I mean, like, I'm not blaming Aaron Sorkin for the current political climate, but it's like the trust that people have in politics and politicians is mainly based off of what they've seen in entertainment. The same way most people base everything off of entertainment, police, firefighters, all that shit. So it's like they see something like The West Wing and they assume all politicians are super intelligent. But if you watch C-SPAN, any given day on C-SPAN, there's some random congressman who's talking and like keeps stumbling over their words, and just you're like, how did this person get elected?
It's so true. Honestly, I'm a diehard West Wing fan, and I'm a diehard Newsroom fan, but I'm watching The West Wing right now just for the escapism. I'm watching it like I would watch Harry Potter.
Yeah. It'd be nice if the world was like that right now.
It would be like nice, wouldn't it? If you could have drinks with any author, dead or alive, who would it be and why?
Probably George R.R. Martin, because I want to threaten his life and make him
what the fuck?
Finish the book series because I'm tired of waiting for it. And he goes off and writes other shit. And it's like, come on.
When was the last time one of his Game of Thrones books came out?
2013. That's
too long.
Yeah.
That's too long.
Yeah. It's really frustrating.
I'm so sorry. The Game of Thrones fans are patient people.
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, the
Very
book fans,
patient.
at least. Maybe not necessarily the TV fans, but...
Wow, I can't imagine. I'm glad I caught on to the show when I did, when it was towards the end, because I wouldn't have been able to deal with the wait.
Oh, it was so tough.
And then you forget things, and then you have to reread. No, thank you. I like that answer. So I could be violent with him. Dead. Excellent. Favorite book or film quote? And this is the last. We made it through the very rapid fire quiz.
Super rapid fire. All right, so I have the quote in front of me.
Excellent.
And can I give a shout out to the book that it's from?
Of course you can. Please do.
So it's from a book series called The Stormlight Archives, which is Brandon Sanderson.
Okay.
And it's from the third book. And it's you should never debate an idiot. No more than you should use your best sword to spread butter.
I love that.
There's more, but I'm just going to leave it at that. It's a really great quote.
You can totally throw in more if there's.
Okay. All right. Let me finish this real quick.
Throw in more. That's so good.
All right. Oh, but I'm a scholar. I enjoy things with curious properties, and stupidity is the most interesting. The more you study it, the further it flees, and yet the more of it you obtain, the less you understand about it.
I love that. That reminds me of that one quote that's something to the effect of never argue with a stupid person, or is it stupid person or is it something else?
It's never argue with an ignorant person or a stupid person, something like that.
Because they'll bring you down to their level and then beat you with experience.
Exactly.
But the sword with the butter is way more of a beautiful visual. I love that.
He's a pretty good writer, and the series itself is just incredible. It's super long though.
I've never heard of it. How many books?
Well, so far there's been 3, and I think he plans on writing 8.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. Except they're all like 1,000 pages, and, you know, I'm tired of fantasy authors writing huge epics and me not being able to finish them quickly.
That's true. Is the writing accessible?
In what way?
So I have a dear friend, shout out to Jackson Palmer, whose favorite book series is The Game of Kings by Dorothy Dunnett. And I will attest to the fact that it is beautifully written, but for some reason, I've never encountered a book that made me feel so dumb in my entire life, because I had to sit there with a dictionary and like the handbook for the series and a French translation too, because they would just switch into like Old English, French verses, and just very wordy.
Yeah, this is not so wordy. I would say it's you can engage with it the same way you can engage with like any other fantasy book, in that like it's probably better if you have a physical copy, because you can flip back to the map or like to a family tree in the glossary to help you.
Fun.
Like with a Kindle, it's a little bit harder, but none of the like. I know there's an author that I had like the same issue with. His name's Guy Gavriel Kay.
Never
and
heard
it's
of
just
them.
same things, like super flowery, like Nana Tootsie language.
Like,
and
where is the period coming?
Yeah.
When can I get a break?
Like, too many long words, but like by the time you finally get to what he's like describing, you realize like, oh, he did a great job. But it's like, God damn it, like you have to drive in circles to get there.
It really is. It's so beautiful, her writing. And honestly, when I am on a roll with it, it's very entertaining. And like the fight scenes are like so vivid, and it's funny, but it's hard. I feel dumb. Like it's hard work to read.
Yeah. You don't want to work when you're reading.
And I feel ashamed to admit it. Like I just feel so dumb when I'm reading this, but it's great.
Nothing to be ashamed of. Seriously.
Well, we made it through the rapid fire quiz. Thank you for sharing that beautiful quote. Congratulations. We're 18 minutes in. I think that's somewhere in the average.
We can cut it down in post.
We'll see. Okay, so we talked a little bit about why you chose 2. It's one of your favorite Harry Potters. Tell me about when you were introduced to the series. Tell me a little bit about your experience with Harry Potter.
So I don't know. I really don't know when I first discovered Harry Potter, but I grew up literally in tandem with the characters. I mean, the first movie came out in like 2001, something like that, right? And so Harry's supposed to be 11 when he goes to Hogwarts the first time. And I was 10, maybe. Yeah. So, I was 10 in 2001. So it was just like automatically perfect for me. And so, I started reading the books, and just like by the end of the book series, I remember the 7th book, Deathly Hallows, came out, and I read it in a day. Like my mom bought it, brought it home, and I stole it from her and read it overnight, had to go to school the next day, and then came home from school and read the rest of it. And I just loved the series. And the movies, again, it's like, what can you do when you're 12 years old, really, except go to the movie theater with your friends? Yeah. Maybe go to the mall. But
we can't even do that right now.
I know, really.
That sounds so nice. Like middle school outing sounds brilliant right now.
I know. So we would go and see Harry Potter and the new Star Wars movies that came out around the same time, and Lord of the Rings. Like the early 2000s were amazing for like big epic fantasy movies and sci-fi. And I think Pirates of the Caribbean came out around that time too, like early 2000s.
Oh yeah. Yeah. So. And then the Matrixes are still going.
Yeah, that's true. Holy crap. I missed
the
early 2000s.
Golden age. Wow. What happened? Nothing good. Those days, like you'd be in the theater for 3 hours to watch like the Lord of the Rings films. Mm-hmm. Wow. What a time to be alive.
Yeah.
So what do you think of the casting with this film?
I want to meet the casting director for this because I think they did an amazing job.
Yeah.
Notwithstanding the fact that I think a lot of the characters got a little bit too attractive later on in the series.
They can't help that.
Exactly.
Or
They
plan
can't.
for that.
I know they can't help that, but like
They're
truthfully,
all gorgeous.
it blew my mind because it's like I remember seeing the first two movies and thinking like, wow, these kids are perfect for their characters.
Yeah.
And then by the third movie, it's like, and it didn't help. I think the third movie was directed by Alfonso Cuarón. I don't know.
I believe that was the first one he hopped on. Yeah.
But he decided to get rid of a bunch of stuff in that movie, including the fact that they had to wear school uniforms. And so
yes,
it just kind of changed the whole aesthetic. But based off of the second movie, every single character, except I think my only real hang-up would be Gilderoy Lockhart, which is kind of a big deal because he's
Kenneth Branagh.
Yeah. I just always pictured him as way more attractive. Like I would have seen like the guy who played Jaime Lannister as Gilderoy Lockhart. Like I thought he was supposed to be like super good looking.
Right. I see what you're saying. And I think Kenneth Branagh is good looking, but I feel like he played a certain like smarminess to him, which I think was so crucial for Lockhart.
Yeah. He played the part incredibly. He played the part so well. My personal hang up is that he's a little bit too old and a little bit too pudgy, I think, for that character. Like the look, his acting, incredible, but like the curly hair, he makes the faces perfectly. But I would have pictured like a younger, more,
because he's characterized as like so handsome and charming.
Yeah.
And everyone was swooning over him. So I get what you're saying. It's just, I'm trying to think of like, obviously Kenneth Branagh is like a very like he has such a great reputation as an actor and a director, and he's like prolific. But I was thinking about what if he was played by someone like, I never pronounced his name correctly. The guy that plays Jaime Lannister. He has a very complicated name. I can never pronounce it correctly.
Yeah.
If it was played by someone like him, at least in my mind, it would almost, I don't know why I associate like super good looking people like that with like being evil.
But is
that weird?
No, I get it. I mean, that's kind of the great thing about Branagh's interpretation of the character is that like you mentioned, his smarminess makes him more of like an oaf as opposed to someone who is like calculating in his ability to steal stories from people and then remove them from the picture with memory charms.
It's so evil what he does.
This dude is dangerous in his own right. And that's kind of important to the story because he is the reason that things are part of the reason why things keep cascading like down and down. And to make him just kind of oafish, it pulls away from the character, I think, a little bit, personally.
Yeah, that's so interesting. But I always think about, okay, if I don't know why I associate the good looks with the evil. I don't know. If it's the Game of Thrones character bleeding in a little bit, even though, I don't know. That would be an interesting thing to read up on, is what that does to you. But I feel like it would almost be in competition to Voldemort at that point.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like, Chamber of Secrets is probably the one movie where Voldemort is the least actually involved. I mean, I know that technically the diary is a Horcrux, which is a retcon, but I think that because Voldemort was still the main villain, but not really as present in this book, it was important to have that sort of secondary villain, even if he was only more of like an anti-hero as opposed to a villain. Yeah,
that makes sense. And it's interesting the second that we leave Lockhart, because we can't really get rid of him the entire book. He always shows up and fucks shit up. Yeah. The second we leave him behind with his memory charm backfiring, that's when we see Voldemort. So, that is an interesting observation. And then what do you think of the casting for Voldemort? Because they changed casting for him multiple times in the movies.
Really? Oh, well,
Yes.
yeah,
So
I mean,
he was played by Christian Coulson this time. I believe that's how you pronounce his name. Yes.
yeah,
And then I believe in Half-Blood Prince. I don't know if you remember seeing. Have you seen Half-Blood Prince?
it's been a long time.
So he is played by Frank Delane in Half-Blood Prince, and he, to me, in that film, is so much creepier. Like this guy in the chamber seems like more charming.
I think that kind of works personally. I mean, because he's supposed to be a recreation of his like teenage self, it makes sense that he's sort of charming in a way, because it's like that's the way a lot of villains sort of come to their villainy, right? It's like they start off being able to manipulate people just with charm and with grace, and then they slowly take it further and further until they become truly evil. So
do you think that's why I associate good looks with evil? It's because you're manipulating me with your parts.
I'm not going to comment on your psychology, but maybe.
Help me, Frank. How does my brain work? That's amazing. No, it's true. He is very, very attractive and very like smooth with all the teachers. The only teacher that was able to see through him was Dumbledore.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, which Richard Harris, right? Richard Harris is Dumbledore.
In this one, yeah.
Such a shame that he passed away, because he was the perfect person to play Dumbledore. And
I really loved him. I still respected Michael Gambon's performance, though.
I think I would have liked Michael Gambon's performance a bit more if he had been the only Dumbledore. If he had started as Dumbledore, great. But because Richard Harris started as Dumbledore, I mean, it's the same thing in every movie that he plays. He just has this like sort of elegance about him. And that was what I associated with Dumbledore always. Michael Gambon was much more gruff as a character, like much more serious, which is fine, but just not as all-powerful seeming, as omnipotent as Dumbledore should be.
Totally. But what I like is that it was easier for me to see how badass he was. Not that Richard Harris isn't badass, because he was. But I don't know, there's something... A lot of people had a problem with Michael Gambon in that scene in Goblet of Fire when he starts yelling at Harry, "Harry, did you put your name in the Goblet of Fire?" I have seen that meme a million times where people like freak out about it, because Dumbledore is supposed to be a very quiet, pensive, kind of reserved person.
Yeah.
So a lot of people had like a problem with Michael Gambon, made him a little bit more lively and aggressive.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I didn't mind.
I mean, I think that it's probably also a directing issue.
Maybe, yeah.
Because the director for the first, and I think the first 4 movies were written by the same person, Steve Kloves. Steve Kloves.
I think he wrote all of them.
I don't know. I think he only wrote up to Order of the Phoenix. They might have brought him back, but I know there was 1 or 2 that he did not write for sure.
Oh, interesting. I'll have to look into that. He's fabulous. It's not an easy job adapting these.
No. Segue.
Segue. Yes. Based on. Yes, so I cover... and Lucius Malfoy.
Oh, well...
Because he was introduced in this one.
Yeah. What's that actor's name?
Jason Isaacs.
Jason Isaacs is incredible. The casting of the villains in this series specifically is amazing.
Everyone in this has a resume that is like beyond comprehension, and everyone is so badass.
What was I just watching? Jason Isaacs was brought up as an actor that they wanted to base a character off of. Oh, it was Avatar: The Last Airbender.
Oh,
right?
Nice.
So there's a villain. There is a villain in that show, and the directors were like, or the producers were like, we want the character to be like Jason Isaacs. And so they built this character that was supposed to be like a Jason Isaacs from The Patriot. And then they ended up getting Jason Isaacs to voice the character. So it just was amazing. Perfect.
He was in The Patriot.
Yeah. He plays the...
Is he the villain?
Main villain, yeah.
I need to rewatch. I haven't seen that movie in a few years.
He's so evil in The Patriot. It's amazing.
I love literally everything I've seen him in. He's incredible. Wow. That's exciting. That's so cool. Okay, so unless you have any other casting standouts, we can move on to storyline adaptation changes. If that vocabulary, if that grammar made any sense, but we're going to go with it.
Totally. I would say shout out to, who's the woman who plays Minerva McGonagall?
Maggie Smith.
Maggie Smith. Shout out to Maggie Smith. Love her.
In our first, when we covered A Sorcerer's Stone, we talked a lot about Maggie Smith. We love Maggie Smith.
Oh my God, she's so good.
I just love McGonagall. And that's actually one of my first changes that I noticed going from the book to the movie is that she's actually the one that tells the story of the Chamber of Secrets in the class instead of Professor Binns, because the ghosts in the books have no, like, they're not brought to life really in the movies.
No. I mean, that's actually like the two, that and the fact that they don't have the ghost party.
Yeah, the Death Day party. Yeah.
Yeah. Those are like those two, and then which are fine. I think those are actually really good adaptations because it's sort of, there's a lot of things in the books that J.K. Rowling writes that just kind of seem to be pointless at some, in some way. Kind
of just add to the world and to kind of fill your brain for fun instead of adding it to the plot line.
Right. Like the Death Day party, and you don't necessarily have to have the history teacher doing it, but it makes sense to have the history teacher doing it. And then you have a fun knock on like history classes being really boring. But the one part of the movie that I noticed that didn't cohere perfectly with, because the rest of the movie is almost like shot for shot adapted, like exactly like the book, which is really impressive.
Yeah, they did that. I think they really started to deviate. When was it, in 4?
The third one, I think they deviated a lot.
It's hard with the third.
Yeah, definitely. But even like in small things with the third, it's like they changed in terms of where everything is located in Hogwarts. Like if you watch the third movie, the way they get to Hagrid's cabin is different from the way they got to it in the first and second movies.
I never noticed that.
Yeah, so it's not like really in the same geographical spot, and it's so irksome. Like,
really?
Yeah.
Oh,
but
fascinating.
The one adaptation that I did think was interesting, because plot-wise, although it doesn't come into like it doesn't really come into the second book at all, but it's important later on, is in the second book, the Dursleys discover early in the book that Harry is not allowed to do magic at home during the summer.
Right.
And that's something they don't cover in the movie.
Right.
So I don't remember if they do that in a later movie, but they're like, they find out that's like a big thing at the beginning of the second book, is like, he's been threatening them with magic, even though he can't do it.
Right.
So
because Hagrid at the end of the first is like, well, you could threaten him with a nice pair of ears.
Yeah.
Which is so good. But yeah, that is interesting. I caught that too. That is an interesting change. What I loved about that history class and the fact that it was Binns, there's something really romantic about the Binns character, because it's like, yeah, he's a boring teacher, but like he clearly loved teaching. That image of like he fell asleep in his armchair and then he just got up to go to work. He did the same thing every day.
Yeah.
There's something so sweet about that, and I don't even know why. It's kind of sad, but it's sweet.
There's definitely something to be said for someone who's that committed to something.
Totally. And just taken aback that people are participating in the class. Wait.
That is a great part.
Yeah.
Like everyone's asleep, and then someone asks about that, and he's finally
flustered, like, doesn't know anyone's name, and he's flustered. It's so good. But McGonagall's the one that took it over in the movie because we can't get enough of Maggie Smith.
Yeah, definitely.
I don't know if that's the actual answer as to why they switched it, but That's why I'm going to say they switched it.
I'm sure, yeah. It was either that or the fact that they didn't want to pay for another actor.
That probably is the correct budgetary reasons.
Yeah. It's like, do we need to do CGI and turn someone into a ghost to explain this exposition? No, we can just have Maggie Smith do it. She's the best.
Do we need to have a ghost party where it's all going to be CGI? Not in the second book. I mean, I'm sure their budget went up from the first movie, but it's not like book 7 budget.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
That's really interesting. Percy being annoying head boy. Honestly, I'm really glad that didn't really transfer.
Yeah, was he head boy in the second one?
Yeah, and that's all he would... No, prefect. And I would just get so irritated with him.
Oh, that's another thing that changed, right? Is that Percy's girlfriend was never a thing in the movie.
Yeah.
The Ravenclaw girl.
Is it Penelope Clearwater?
I don't know. I don't remember the name of the character.
I don't know where I pulled that name out.
She gets frozen. She gets frozen at the same time as Hermione in the books.
Right.
And there's some sort of like subplot that just never pans out with him and her dating each other. So Percy Weasley is a weird... The one thing that I thought was also odd was I never noticed how much shorter he was in the movies than Fred and George. And he's supposed to be their older brother.
That's really funny. I mean, you can't control that shit.
No, of course not. But it's just like you look at him standing next to those two lanky dudes and it just kind of looks odd.
Yeah, totally. One thing that really, like, I'll never get over, and I'll probably say this every Harry Potter episode that I cover, is that Fred and George don't get enough justice in the films, because in the books they're way funnier and they're the sweetest guys.
Yeah.
In the books. Like, that whole Quidditch match where the bludger was charmed to kill Harry, they're protecting him the whole time. And that didn't get addressed. He had to, like, do it on his own.
Yeah, I'm guessing it's also a budgetary thing, but that whole Quidditch match just seemed like they really sort of shit the bed with that, because they could have made it so much cooler and so much more intense. And I know the movie's super long, but add another 5 minutes of Quidditch, because everybody loves to watch Quidditch. Is that
the longest Harry Potter movie? Is it? It feels like it to me.
It's like 2 hours and 40 minutes long. I didn't realize that.
It's so long.
I remember it being so much shorter when I was a kid.
That's hilarious. No, I found it to be super long. There was one more. Oh, yeah. Just the ghost, like, because I mentioned this in the first episode, Peeves is not even a thing in the movies.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
So the ghosts and Fred and George, those are the two things, like, they don't get justice in the movies, but
yeah, they do have Nearly Headless, and they also don't really have the portrait, right? The lady in the pink dress. Isn't she more of a thing in the books? Yeah,
because she decides who gets into the common room and who doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Interesting.
Oh, you know what? I will say one other casting thing. We can go back to casting?
Yeah.
The kid who plays Crabbe.
Which one is he?
Crabbe, Goyle is the bigger one, like the
one that Harry transformed into.
Yeah, and Crabbe is the one that Ron transforms into.
Yeah,
and I just don't get it. He's not like big and threatening like he's supposed to be in the books. They're both described as like big brutish characters.
I always picture them as like big football players.
Yeah, and they decided to go with like one who looks big and brutish, and the other one who's just kind of a fat kid,
just like more his sidekick.
Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah, it's interesting they leaned more into like their lack of intelligence than their intimidation. I think because for me, Malfoy's more intimidating in the movies. Because of his attitude.
Yeah, I mean that kid did a perfect job. He's so good at playing Malfoy. He was like almost as good as the kid who plays Joffrey Baratheon. Just like
oh my god. Joffrey gives me the willies. He just creeps me out so much. I don't even remember a time where I was so excited to see a character get killed.
Oh, totally.
And it was like so brutal, and it was just like incredible. Wow.
The best.
So if it's cool with you, we're going to move on to our next segment, the questions of the day.
Let's do it.
I don't have a weird dad joke for this segment, but we're gonna make do.
You can put it in post.
I'll put it in post, or if you come up with one, you can just say it. No. Very good. What class would you take at Hogwarts?
I think I would take potions.
With Snape as your teacher?
I mean, yes, because Snape is actually an amazing teacher. Like, outside of the fact that he's a dick to Harry, he's
my favorite
clearly
character.
like one of the most powerful wizards at Hogwarts. And potions seems to be like much more versatile. Like you can do a lot of different things with potions. And as a part of potions, you kind of have to know herbology and care of magical creatures. So it's like 3 subjects rolled into one, because you need, the different items to make potions. And yeah, I mean, I just think it's way cooler. I mean, like the Polyjuice potion, it's freaking awesome. What a great idea.
It looks disgusting, but it's badass. Okay, before I ask you who you would turn into if you could take the Polyjuice potion, what I do want to say about the badassery that is Severus Snape in the movie, and it's in the book too, but like in the movie, Lockhart's such a dick. And during the fucking
dueling scene,
and he's like, I have my assistant. I'm like, your assistant doesn't even have to lift a finger to destroy you. He could literally worm his way inside your brain and fucking end you.
Oh my god.
Do you see the way, like, because for my class, like, I would love to be tutored in occlumency by Snape.
Okay.
But when he's walking up onto the stage after he announced him that way, like, here's my assistant. And he just walked up. I'm like, oh, like, he wants to kill you, and he can.
Also, his pose when they like get into their fighting stances is amazing.
It's incredible.
With like the wand over his head like this, it's so cool.
I don't want to go toe to toe with him. Just Snape on my team always. He's my favorite.
And perfectly cast, too.
Oh my god, yes. And I was like looking out for like, because I know he knew like that he was in love with Lily, because Joe Rowling told him ahead of time. And so I'm like catching little glimpses. Like anytime Harry was in like real danger, he would like step in.
Yeah.
It's like
so cute.
His face is so cute. It's so like when he discovers that this is the first time I noticed this, when he discovered that Harry can speak snake language when he's a parcel mouth. He looked mortified, like, oh shit, I'm in deeper than, like, this is more serious than we originally thought.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, he played that beautifully.
No, I mean, Alan Rickman, R.I.P., one of the greatest actors of all time.
I know, he was amazing. He was amazing.
Yeah, and, and that was another thing where that was probably one of those characters who wasn't cast like perfectly to look exactly the same as Snape, because I think Snape as a character written was sort of more slim and very like aquiline. God
good
damn it, Alan Rickman.
Frank. Damn.
And Alan Rickman just fucking like killed it. Just killed it.
He brought so much soul to the character.
Seriously. And the way he pauses, the way like I don't know whether or not that was written in the script or whether that was just a choice that he made.
It was a choice.
Yeah.
Maggie Smith talks about it in an interview. We would do scenes together and I'd just be like tapping my finger, like, get on with it. Get on with it. Speak faster.
Love Maggie Smith.
Get on with it. I'm Ted. You just hang on every word that he says. Let's discuss the polarizing effect that Gilderoy Lockhart, did I say that weird? Gilderoy Lockhart has on the cast of characters. Is he Harry's cautionary tale? And yes, I thought of these questions all by myself.
Honestly, I don't think he is Harry's cautionary tale, because I think that Harry actually does sort of start to exhibit some characteristics that are similar to Lockhart's near the end of the books. I know, like, in terms of his polarization, he just pisses everybody off. So it's kind of everyone against him. At least.
Or people are obsessed with him that don't know him that well.
Yeah, but once you get to know him, I mean, like, you know, other than like Hermione, I think, who in the books just doesn't seem to recognize that and in the movies, that he's an idiot, but it seems like most everyone, once they get to know him, realizes that he's a fraud. And, you know, even like the female teachers are like annoyed with him constantly.
Yeah.
So, but in terms of him being a cautionary tale, I mean, he obviously could be, but I think like, yeah, if I'm remembering correctly, I think that Ron gets chosen to be a prefect for Gryffindor House later on in the show, or in the movie, in the books and movies.
It should be a show.
Yeah, maybe later. And there's like a whole subplot about Harry being jealous of Ron, and that's one thing that I think it didn't seem like it made it into the movies as much as it was in the books, was that like Harry sort of becomes ostracized later in the books, and he feels resentful about it because he's like, I was the boy who lived. Like when he got to Hogwarts, he couldn't help but be popular, but later on in the books, it's like everything seems to be passing him by, and he gets really mad about it. And so he's sort of turning into Gilderoy. It's like, well, I was the center of attention. Why am I not the center of attention anymore?
Right. No, that's really interesting. And speaking of which, like, they really don't, you're right, recognize that in the films, because what they do focus on is when Ron gets jealous, which I almost think wasn't even that fair necessarily, because Ron has kind of, I know that the group doesn't see this that way, but like Ron has kind of played second fiddle to Harry like the entire time. I think it's natural to have a little bit of jealousy, particularly when the girl you love is involved.
Yeah. Although I didn't recognize personally that he and Hermione had like a romantic thing going on until much later on in the books than I think was intended. I don't know, because like it's supposed to be like book 4, right? That they start to get really romantically sort of.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, with Crumb. He gets jealous of Crumb.
Right. Yeah. I just didn't see it.
Yeah.
All that much. But I do think Ron as a character gets a really, like, he's supposed to be kind of the butt of a joke when he's actually really impressive in a lot of ways.
I think he's incredibly impressive. And I feel like Harry was also nasty at times, and it wasn't shown as much in the movies.
Yeah, for sure. And I don't think they really go too much about this in the books or in the movies, but part of the reason why Harry is so powerful is because he had a little bit of Voldemort's power in him. Mm-hmm. And it's like, well, would he be as impressive if he was just a normal wizard? Who knows?
That's a very interesting question, because frankly, I think Hermione is the most impressive out of all of them.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Agreed.
So what do you think about his connection between him and Voldemort and how he struggles with it?
I mean, honestly, this is one place where I think that the younger Daniel Radcliffe did a better job than the older Daniel Radcliffe.
Interesting.
And now I think Daniel Radcliffe now is an amazing actor, but in the later Harry Potter movies, I think there was a little bit too much challenge for him, and he wasn't really up to it. So his interpretation of the relationship that he has between himself and Voldemort in the second movie specifically is very much like a child who's afraid of the fact that he can do something that nobody seems to think is normal. And he's very good at being like sort of the shy child who doesn't want to talk about it. And then when he finally comes out with it, we're talking to Dumbledore about it, it's really just sort of a great dialogue. And you don't see that in the later movies, because I feel like whoever was directing him was telling him to be a little bit more confident. And it's like, well, no, he's still a kid. I mean, he's still like 14, 15 years old. And no 14 or 15-year-old is going to be confident in the face of ultimate evil. Yeah.
There's so much asked of this character.
Yeah.
The fact that Cedric dies right in front of him, and really like it happens because they both decided to go. Like, That's almost too much for any person to bear. And yet he was, he had torture for another 3 movies, 3 books.
Yeah, and I think that especially in the second book, when he's sort of questioning himself and wondering if he should be in Slytherin, there's another part of me that doesn't, I don't know. I mean, like, when you watch the movies and you read the books, everyone in Slytherin is evil. But it's like, is everyone in Slytherin actually evil?
No,
I mean,
Snape is.
Yeah, right. So I would have liked a little bit more. I don't know. It's easy to hate a character when you know that they're evil. But when you think about characters like Snape, who are really like amazing and memorable rather, it's because they are bad but also good, and so you can relate to them and it makes you connect with them, as opposed to just being like, oh yeah, that person's evil and I hate them. It's easy.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. It makes them more human.
Right, which is why I think going into Harry sort of struggling with the Slytherin versus Gryffindor thing would have been much more interesting. But then it kind of like resolves in that, oh, Harry was always Gryffindor. It just, he had part of Voldemort, so that was the part that was Slytherin. It's like,
it does. I did notice it come up in, was it? No, it was the 5th one, Order of the Phoenix, where he's talking to Sirius, and he says, "What if I'm bad?" Because he started seeing things from Voldemort's perspective.
Right. Doesn't he? He has visions as Nagini, Voldemort's
right.
snake.
Yeah. And the snake attacking Arthur Weasley. So I know that he was having like a crisis of confidence there as well. It's interesting. It kind of frustrates me that Dumbledore didn't give him more information and kind of let him mentally suffer through all this doubt.
Yeah. It's kind of a good thing, though, too, right? If you think about it, because Dumbledore's letting him come to his own conclusions and sort of learn and grow as a person on his own.
Yeah.
It's interesting to think about from Dumbledore's perspective, too, because who knows magic? It's like the whole idea of what happened to Harry and what caused him to survive and Voldemort to be, because the other thing, and this is something they don't really mention in the movie, but in the books they mention that like, oh, Dumbledore's hiding somewhere in or Voldemort's hiding somewhere in Romania. It's like, wait, Voldemort's alive? And it's like, he's hiding in Romania? So wait, is Voldemort alive or is he dead? That's like throughout the books, it's very vague until you get to like Goblet of Fire and he actually comes back. But it's like he's dead, but he's alive and he was defeated and his magic was destroyed and what's going on? Who cares? But the idea that Dumbledore is watching over this child who has, in a sense, been infected by evil magic from the most evil wizard of all time.
Yeah.
I mean, if I was Dumbledore and, I'm this like uber intelligent, amazing wizard, I'm probably looking at this kid like, he could go either way. Like, I don't want to influence him because he might turn super evil.
That's so interesting. That's fascinating, truly, because when you just said, like, he's infected by this evil magic, it really reminds me of the line that Snape says later in the movies. I don't know if this line was in the book, but he says, "You've been raising him like a pig for slaughter." So it really like is kind of like an experiment. They don't really know what's going to happen.
Yeah, and that's partly in the writing, I think, too. It's like J.K. Rowling makes Dumbledore into less of a father figure as the books go on and into more of, well, maybe not so much the books, but the movies definitely. He becomes less of a father figure and more of like a puppet master.
Yeah.
And it's unfortunate because I think you can still have someone be concerned about Harry as a person, but because Dumbledore is sort of like an omnipotent, all-powerful wizard, he's going to be curious about this kid who has done something that's never been done before and like how that's going to affect him.
Yeah. Wild. Excellent, Frank. So before we sign off, because I thought this was lovely and informative, and I learned new things. Do you have any... Stop laughing. Are you laughing at me?
No, not at all.
Are there any pieces of fan fiction that you've read in this universe that you enjoy? Or are there games or websites based on this universe that you like? And if not, what do you like to play in if you play in fan fiction?
Sure. I don't think I've ever read any fan fiction for Harry Potter.
Have you been on Pottermore?
I have been, but not recently. I did it. I joined to do the quiz to see what my house was.
What are you?
And I'm Slytherin.
Yeah, buddy.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm Gryffindor, Cusper.
There you go. I've always wanted to see what the houses were for other schools. Like, I was just doing some research and like, oh, I wonder what the houses are at the Brazilian wizarding school. Because it's like there's one in Brazil, there's one in America, there's one in France, one in Eastern Europe.
Oh, so cool.
Yeah, and I'm like, I wonder what the Brazilian one is. Because why does it have to be just the Hogwarts houses?
Oh, that's interesting. I wonder if the games...
I definitely played growing up, like the Harry Potter video games that were made after the movies. And one that I played a bunch of was the Harry Potter Quidditch game.
Oh, nice.
Oh my God. Because when I was growing up, again, like right around the time the movies came out, my PE teacher came up with a Quidditch game, or maybe he just stole it off the internet. I don't know. But it was actually Quidditch. So there were kids running around with the little foam dodgeballs, and that was the quaffle, and they would have to run and shoot it. And then he had 4 bludgers, which were the big rubber dodgeballs.
Oh wow!
And then he would throw like a yellow flag, like a yellow football flag, and that was the snitch. And so he would just throw it like after everyone had been like running around for like, I don't know, 30 minutes. He'd throw the snitch.
Would you guys have broomsticks?
Nobody had broomsticks, no. But he also he gave everyone flags, and so like if someone pulled your flag, like you had to go step off and put it back on because that's like you getting back on your broomstick.
Amazing. At Irvine, I would see often in the big circular grassy area there, people on broomsticks playing Quidditch.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's pretty badass.
See Irvine.
Yeah. So, Frank, I wanted to say, guys, if you guys have any fan fiction that you write, please feel free to send it to me, and I'd love to share it with our listeners. You can send it to basedonshow@gmail.com. And I want to thank Frank Onorati for joining me today. Frank, are you private on social media?
I don't think so.
Okay.
But nobody really wants to follow me.
If anyone wants to follow you, are you willing to throw your handle out there? Or are there any movie recommendations that you have? Anything you're willing to share with the class? Please do. This is your time to shine. Go.
Sure. I'm on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. I don't actually know my handles because I'm bad at social media. But if you can find me, you're welcome to add me.
Frank Onorati.
Something like that. And movie recommendations. Yeah. Dark, the TV show on Netflix, the German TV show. Okay. Definitely recommend that.
Is it dubbed or subtitled?
It has a dubbed version, so you can watch either way, honestly. The dubbing's not terrible, but...
It's actually really good on Netflix. I'm surprised. It's amazing.
Yeah. It's interesting. Much better than the subtitling, actually, because Netflix's subtitling is kind of dubious. They make some weird choices.
I'm impressed with your vocabulary this evening.
Wow. What else? Movie recommendations. What's one that I watched recently? Oh, Josie and the Pussycats.
I haven't seen that in years.
Yeah, we just watched that again recently, and it totally holds up. So
did it put you guys in a good mood?
Absolutely.
That's fun.
Absolutely.
What a good option. I love that. Thank you, Frank. This was Based on an Adaptation podcast. I'm Pamela Portnoy. We'll have a new episode out to you every other Monday. You can find us on iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, Google Play, and YouTube. And please don't forget to subscribe and leave a review. You can follow us on Instagram and Facebook at Based on Podcasts. Thank you so much for listening, and thank you to Frank Onorati again, Tiffany Haymoff, Jackson Palmer, Claire Palmer, Maya Ashkenazi, Jordan Ross Weinhold, Jason Crow, and Soundwork Studios. See you next time.